Winter was a different beast at 8,000 feet in the Wind River Mountains. Jacob Petro learned this the hard way his first December in 1884. Frost painted delicate patterns on the inside of his cabin walls, and his water bucket, a mere 3 feet from the roaring wood stove, surrendered to the ice. He'd built his cabin exactly as every homesteader was instructed: tightly notched logs, an iron stove promising warmth, a rough-hewn plank floor, and a simple wooden bed frame. All standard, all trusted, or so he thought. By February, he devoured more wood than 2 men should reasonably need in a season, yet he still woke shivering, his breath clouding in the frigid air. He soon discovered that neighboring cabins were locked in the same losing battle against the relentless mountain cold. That spring, while others grumbled and hauled more timber, Jacob quietly put his grandfather's old-world masonry techniques to work, constructing what his neighbors scoffed at as a fool's clay oven bed. While their cabins remained stubbornly cold, consuming cord after cord of precious firewood, Jacob slept warm through sub-zero nights, using half the wood. It was a silent revolution, fueled by forgotten knowledge. In the next few minutes, I'll dissect the exact steps and principles behind this overlooked heating marvel. What did Jacob understand about storing and releasing heat that every serious cold climate builder absolutely must know? The accepted wisdom across the high country clung to a simple pattern that seemed to make perfect, practical sense: build fast, build cheap, and get shelter erected before the relentless snows began to fly. Every homesteader manual and territorial guide preached the same gospel of speed and economy. Frame your cabin with whatever timber you could fell and drag, no matter how rough. Lay a simple stick floor over equally rough joists. Throw up plank walls as quickly as possible and drop a cast iron stove in one corner. The Sears and Roebuck catalog, a Bible for settlers, promised that their Model 7 wood burner could heat any cabin up to a generous 400 square feet. And most settlers, desperate for warmth and comfort, accepted that promise as frontier law. Jacob, initially, had followed this wisdom precisely. His cabin measured a modest 16 by 20 feet, with 7-foot walls chinked with mud and moss, hastily packed between the logs. The stick floor, laid directly on joists spaced 4 feet apart, featured gaps wide enough to swallow a coin hole. His iron stove, a significant expense hauled up from Cheyenne by wagon train, sat in the northwest corner, its straight-pipe chimney punching directly through the roof. A narrow bed platform, built from roughly split pine planks, occupied the opposite corner, raised a meager 18 inches off the floor on crude log supports. Every neighbor for 20 miles had built essentially the same structure, a testament to the perceived wisdom of the frontier. The problem, however, reared its icy head before December ended. On clear nights when the temperature plunged below zero, the interior walls wept condensation that froze into shimmering sheets of ice by morning. The plank floor, acting as a conductor of cold, transmitted the chill so efficiently that standing barefoot for even a few seconds became an excruciating ordeal. Worse still, the cast iron stove created a brutal temperature gradient. Within 3 feet of the firebox, the air became uncomfortably, almost unbearably hot, while the far corners of the cabin remained stubbornly below freezing. The bed platform, deliberately positioned away from the stove to mitigate the ever-present fire risk, stayed so cold that Jacob woke each morning stiff and aching, despite piling on every quilt and blanket he owned. His neighbors suffered identical, bone-chilling failures. Thomas Brennan, whose cabin sat half a mile down the valley, burned through his entire winter wood supply by early February and was forced to start dismantling furniture, feeding his family's hope for warmth with splinters of precious memories. Mary and Samuel Curtis reported that their baby developed a persistent, hacking cough from sleeping in the perpetually damp and frigid cabin air, a constant reminder of their struggle against the cold. Most disturbingly, old Henrik Larsson's roof began sagging ominously under the accumulating snow load because the cabin's interior remained so cold that no heat rose to melt the accumulating ice. It was a silent, creeping threat. Jacob, however, possessed a secret weapon, a legacy that set him apart from most frontier settlers. His grandfather, Dimitri Petrov had been a master cackler in the Carpathian Mountains of what would eventually become Romania, building massive masonry stoves, works of art in themselves, that heated peasant cottages through winters far harsher than anything Wyoming could throw at them. As a boy in Pennsylvania, Jacob had been captivated by endless stories about these old-world heating systems. Dimitri would describe clay and stone ovens that weighed several tons, incorporating elaborate internal channels that captured every scintilla of heat from cooking fires and painstakingly stored it within the immense masonry mass. Families would sleep on benches built directly into these stoves, soaking up the stored warmth all night long, fueled by a single evening fire. The local homesteading community, however, viewed such stories as nothing more than charming old-world nonsense, quaint but utterly impractical for the harsh realities of the frontier. When Jacob cautiously mentioned his grandfather's techniques at the monthly community meeting in Brennan's cabin, the response was immediate and derisive mockery. "We ain't building castles here, Jacob," Thomas Brennan declared, his voice laced with thinly veiled scorn. "We're trying to survive, not show off with fancy European contraptions." Samuel Curtis, never one to be left out of a good ribbing, added that masonry work required lime mortar and skilled stonework, resources that simply didn't exist on the frontier. Besides, Curtis continued, puffing out his chest, who's got time to haul tons of rock when there's land to clear and crops to plant? We have priorities, Jacob. Yet, Jacob observed a fundamental truth that his neighbors, blinded by conventional wisdom, had missed entirely. The core problem wasn't the cold itself, but rather how quickly heat bled away from their cabins, escaping into the unforgiving wilderness. Cast iron stoves heated the air rapidly, creating brief moments of intense warmth, but provided no thermal storage whatsoever. The moment the fire died down, all that hard-won heat vanished, either escaping up the chimney or leaking through the countless gaps and cracks in their light, flimsy construction. The stick floors, raised on joists with air circulating freely underneath, actually exacerbated the problem, creating a chilling convection current that drew cold air throughout the cabin. The thin plank walls offered virtually no insulation, and the minimal thermal mass meant that temperature swings of 40 degrees or more were common, oscillating wildly between the searing heat of a roaring fire and the bone-chilling cold of dying embers. Jacob, undeterred by the skepticism, began sketching ideas in a leather-bound journal his grandfather had gifted him years before, a silent conversation with the past. Instead of heating air that immediately escaped, what if he could heat a substantial mass of stone and clay that would patiently hold and slowly release its warmth for hours on end? Instead of a raised bed platform that remained stubbornly cold, what if the sleeping surface sat directly on or against this heated mass, soaking up the stored energy? His grandfather's stories included detailed descriptions of families sleeping soundly on clay-covered stone benches, warmed by the residual heat from evening cooking fires, a practice that seemed almost magical to the frontiersmen. The technical challenge, of course, lay in adapting these old-world masonry techniques to the stark constraints of the frontier. Dimitri's peasant stoves relied on fired bricks and lime mortar, materials utterly unavailable in the Wind River Mountains. But the region offered an abundance of fieldstone, scattered across the landscape like fallen jewels, and Jacob possessed the knowledge to mix a workable, clay-based mortar from local materials. The core principle remained the same: create a massive heat storage system, incorporating internal flue channels to capture the exhaust heat before it could escape up the chimney. His neighbor's skepticism ran deeper than mere practicality. The frontier mentality prized speed and simplicity above all else. Heavy masonry work seemed to violate the essential spirit of homesteading, which demanded mobility and minimal investment in permanent structures. Many settlers expected to move on once they proved up their claims, regarding elaborate heating systems as a wasteful extravagance. The very idea of sleeping on stone and clay struck them as primitive, even barbaric, when compared to the perceived comfort and sophistication of proper wooden bed frames. Jacob recognized that he was challenging more than just building techniques. He was challenging an entire philosophy. The accepted frontier approach represented a complete worldview, a minimalist approach to materials, a relentless pursuit of speed, and the acceptance of temporary solutions for temporary people. His grandfather's masonry tradition, in stark contrast, assumed permanence, valued patient craftsmanship, and prioritized investment in long-term comfort over immediate convenience. The conflict cut to the very heart of how these people thought about survival itself. Throughout January and February, as his neighbors burned through cords of precious firewood while still shivering through bitter nights, Jacob quietly gathered fieldstones and began experimenting with clay mixtures, a silent rebellion against the established order. He intended to test whether old-world thermal wisdom could effectively solve new-world heating problems, or whether the frontier skeptics were right that such methods had no place in the pragmatic business of mountain survival. By early March, Jacob had amassed enough fieldstone to begin construction, a small army of rocks waiting to be transformed. The stones varied in size, ranging from fist-sized chunks to pieces weighing 50 pounds or more, all gathered from a talus slope 2 miles east of his cabin, a testament to his relentless dedication. He meticulously selected only the densest, hardest stones, the ones least likely to crack under repeated heating cycles, carefully avoiding any rock with visible cracks or soft, crumbly surfaces. The clay came from a promising deposit he had discovered along the creek bed, a blue-gray material that transformed into a remarkably plastic and workable substance when mixed with water, but dried to the hardness of concrete. The foundation work necessitated demolishing a section of his existing stick floor, a symbolic act of defiance against the established order. Jacob pulled up the pine planks and dug 18 inches into the frozen earth, creating a rectangular pit measuring 8 feet long by 4 feet wide, a space that would soon become the heart of his revolutionary heating system. He lined this excavation with a base layer of small stones, providing a stable and level foundation. Then, he mixed his first batch of mortar, using 3 parts clay, 1 part sand, and chopped straw for binding strength. The mixture had to achieve a precise consistency, wet enough to flow easily between the stones, filling every void, but thick enough to support weight without slumping or collapsing. Construction commenced with the firebox, positioned at one end of the foundation, the starting point of the thermal revolution. Jacob built this chamber using the largest, flattest stones, creating an internal space roughly 2 feet wide, 18 inches deep, and 20 inches high. The firebox walls rose 12 inches above ground level, topped with a carefully crafted arched opening facing into the cabin, an invitation to the warmth within. This opening measured 14 inches wide by 10 inches high, deliberately smaller than the interior chamber to create proper draft and efficient combustion conditions. The truly revolutionary element, however, lay in the intricate flue system that Jacob designed within the very heart of the masonry mass. Instead of allowing hot exhaust gases to escape directly up a chimney, as was the standard practice, he created a labyrinth of channels that forced the smoke and heat to travel a circuitous path through the stone mass before finally exiting. Starting from the back of the firebox, the first channel ran horizontally along the base of the structure for 6 feet, meticulously engineered to maximize heat transfer, then turned sharply upward through a vertical section, then horizontal again in the opposite direction, creating a complex, S-shaped path through the interior of the mass. Each channel measured roughly 6 inches square, large enough to prevent blockage from soot or debris, but small enough to ensure maximum contact between the hot gases and the surrounding stone, a delicate balance of flow and efficiency. Jacob formed these passages by laying flat stones as channel floors and walls, then carefully covering them with more flat stones before adding the next layer of masonry above. The work demanded constant attention to detail, maintaining proper dimensions, and ensuring smooth transitions to prevent turbulence that could disrupt the crucial draft. The most critical technical innovation involved the seamless integration of the sleeping platform. Rather than building a separate bed frame, as his neighbors had done, Jacob cleverly constructed the sleeping surface as an integral part of the heated mass, a direct conduit for warmth. The final layer of masonry extended beyond the firebox area, creating a flat platform measuring 6 feet long by 3 feet wide, a comfortable and inviting space for rest. This surface sat directly over the horizontal flue channels, with only 4 inches of carefully positioned stones separating the sleeper from the hot exhaust gases flowing beneath, a testament to Jakob's ingenious design. The platform required careful engineering to distribute weight properly and ensure structural integrity. Jakob used large, flat capstones, some weighing over 100 pounds, to create an even and comfortable sleeping surface. Between these stones and the flue channels below, he installed a layer of smaller stones, meticulously packed with clay mortar, providing additional thermal mass while simultaneously protecting the structural integrity of the gas passages underneath, a delicate balancing act of heat transfer and structural support. Clay mortar proved absolutely essential for creating airtight joints throughout the entire system, preventing leaks and maximizing efficiency. Jakob quickly discovered that pure clay, when left to dry on its own, tended to crack, diminishing its sealing capabilities. He experimented with a variety of different additives, each with its own unique properties, before finally settling on the optimal combination. His final mixture consisted of 4 parts of the same blue clay used in his masonry work, 2 parts sand, 1 part chopped grass for added fiber, and 1 part wood ash salvaged from a stove. This unique combination dried without developing any major cracking and created robust, gas-tight seals between the individual stones. He applied the mortar generously between each joint, ensuring complete coverage, and then meticulously smoothed the interior channel surfaces to prevent soot buildup and maintain proper gas flow. The chimney connection, the final gateway to the outside world, required equally precise calculation. Jakob positioned the final exit port at the highest point of the flue labyrinth, 18 inches above the sleeping platform, ensuring maximum heat extraction before the gases were released. From here, a vertical, clay-lined channel rose through the cabin roof, sized at 8 inches square to provide adequate draft without excessive heat loss, a delicate balance of pressure and temperature. The entire flue path, from the firebox to the chimney exit, measured approximately 24 feet, a deliberate design to maximize heat extraction from the exhaust gases, ensuring that every last bit of energy was captured and utilized. Testing commenced on a mild evening in late March when the outside temperatures hovered around a brisk 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Jakob built a small fire in the firebox, using dry pine kindling and split aspen logs, carefully selected for their quick-burning properties. Within an hour, he could feel warmth radiating from the stone platform, a silent confirmation of his hard work. The flue system drew perfectly, with no smoke entering the cabin and a steady draft pulling the combustion gases through the labyrinth. The thermal performance far exceeded his most optimistic expectations. After the fire had burned down to glowing coals, the sleeping platform surface registered approximately 90 degrees Fahrenheit when tested by hand, a welcome respite from the frigid cabin air. More significantly, this warmth persisted throughout the entire night. When Jakob awoke 12 hours later, the stone surface still felt noticeably warm to the touch, measuring roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit by his estimation, a testament to the incredible heat storage capabilities of the masonry bed. Fuel efficiency proved equally impressive. The evening's fire had consumed approximately 1/8 of a cord of split wood, including the initial heating period, a remarkably small amount considering the sustained warmth it had provided. His cast iron stove, by comparison, had required constant feeding throughout cold nights, typically burning through 1/4 of a cord of wood for a similar heating duration, a stark contrast in efficiency. The masonry system's ability to capture and store heat from the combustion gases meant that far less thermal energy escaped and used up the chimney, a significant improvement in resource utilization. The completed mass weighed approximately 2 tons, encompassing the fieldstone, the clay mortar, and the sleeping platform, a substantial investment of labor and materials. This enormous thermal capacity meant that the system heated slowly, requiring a degree of patience, but it also cooled slowly, providing a steady and sustained release of warmth over extended periods. Unlike his iron stove, which created rapid temperature swings as fires built up and died down, the masonry mass moderated these fluctuations through its inherent heat storage capacity, creating a more comfortable and stable environment. Jacob's neighbors noticed the reduced smoke emanating from his chimney and the noticeably smaller wood pile beside his cabin, but few truly understood the intricate technical principles at work, the subtle magic behind the seeming miracle. Thomas Brennan commented that Jacob seemed to be burning less wood, but dismissed it as an indication of insufficient heating, a common misconception. The true test, however, would come during the next severe cold snap, when the thermal mass system would be forced to face the kind of extreme conditions that had routinely defeated conventional frontier heating methods. The masonry bed's effectiveness soon revealed a critical weakness in Jacob's cabin envelope, the cracks in its armor. While the heated stone platform provided sustained warmth directly beneath the sleeper, heat radiated into the cabin's airspace, only to escape almost immediately through countless gaps and poorly insulated surfaces. On calm nights, when the wind remained dormant, the system worked reasonably well, providing a noticeable improvement in comfort. But when the wind picked up, as it often did in the high country, cold drafts infiltrated through every crack between the logs, around the ill-fitting door frame, and through the gaps in his stick flooring, relentlessly carrying away the precious thermal energy faster than the mass could replace it. Jakob painstakingly identified the primary heat loss mechanisms through careful observation during April's variable weather, using a combination of intuition and scientific reasoning. Cold air entered the cabin primarily through the spaces between the logs, which had been chinked only with mud and moss the previous autumn, a temporary solution at best. This hastily applied chinking had dried, cracked, and partially fallen out during the freeze-thaw cycles of winter, leaving gaps up to 2 inches wide in places, a veritable highway for the cold. Additional infiltration occurred around the door, which fit poorly in its frame, and through the single window, where the glass sat loosely in a rough wooden frame without proper sealing. The solution, Jakob knew, required a systematic approach to air sealing, a comprehensive strategy that drew upon techniques he had observed in Pennsylvania German farmhouses during his youth, a reminder of the ingenuity of the past. These settlers, many of German and Swiss origin, had developed sophisticated and remarkably effective methods for weatherproofing their log structures using only the materials readily available on the frontier. The key innovation, he remembered, involved creating a secondary thermal barrier using clay-based plaster, applied directly to the interior log surfaces, an internal layer of defense against the elements. Jacob began by preparing a new chinking mixture, far superior to his original mud and moss approach, a mixture designed to stand the test of time. He combined 4 parts of the same blue clay used in his masonry work with 2 parts sand, 1 part chopped straw, and 1 part cow dung, obtained from a neighbor's cattle, a testament to frontier resourcefulness. The organic matter provided binding strength, preventing cracking as the mixture dried, while the clay formed a strong, airtight seal. This improved chinking was packed deep into the gaps between the logs, pressed firmly with wooden tools to eliminate any lingering air pockets, and smoothed flush with the log surfaces, creating a seamless barrier against the wind. The truly revolutionary step, however, involved applying a continuous clay plaster coat to the entire interior wall surface, transforming the cabin into a thermal fortress. This technique, which Jakob remembered seeing in the homes of German immigrants, created a thermal mass layer that absorbed heat from the cabin's air and re-radiated it slowly over time, providing a more stable and consistent indoor temperature. He mixed the plaster using 3 parts clay, 2 parts fine sand, and 1 part finely chopped grass, adding just enough water to achieve a consistency that could be easily applied with his hands and smoothed with wooden floats. Application required working in sections, typically during warm afternoons when the clay would dry properly, preventing cracking and ensuring a solid bond. Jakob spread the plaster approximately 1/2 inch thick across the log surfaces, pressing it firmly into the wood grain to ensure proper adhesion, creating a robust connection. The technique demanded patience and meticulous attention to detail, as rushing the work often created air bubbles and weak spots that would inevitably crack and fall off over time. Each section took 2 days to cure completely, during which Jacob had to maintain a consistent cabin temperature to prevent rapid drying and subsequent cracking. The window and door sealing presented different technical challenges, requiring ingenuity and resourcefulness. For the window, Jacob created a double barrier system using the limited materials at his disposal. He first sealed the gaps around the glass with a mixture of pine pitch and clay, heated until pliable and pressed into place with wooden tools, creating a tight, airtight seal. Then, he constructed removable interior shutters from split pine boards, meticulously designed to fit tightly against the window frame on cold nights. These shutters included a layer of wool batting, salvaged from damaged clothing, creating an insulative airspace between the glass and the interior, effectively trapping heat. Door sealing required precision fitting, testing Jacob's carpentry skills to the limit. He trimmed the door frame to reduce gaps, then created weather stripping using strips of wool felt, carefully pressed into grooves carved along the frame edges, a testament to his meticulous nature. A heavy wool blanket, hung on pegs, provided additional sealing during the coldest nights, though this made entry and exit somewhat inconvenient. The most innovative element involved addressing the persistent heat loss through the floor, a silent energy drain. Jacob's stick flooring, raised on joists with open air circulation underneath, created a massive cold bridge that undermined the entire heating system, a constant source of discomfort. He solved this problem by installing a vapor barrier and an insulative layer beneath the floor structure, effectively isolating the cabin from the frigid ground below. Using birch bark, gathered from nearby groves, he created overlapping sheets that blocked air movement between the floor joists, preventing the free flow of cold air. Over this barrier, he packed dried grass and pine needles, creating an insulative layer approximately 6 inches thick, a natural and effective way to trap heat. The thermal performance improvements became apparent within days of completing the envelope work, a tangible reward for his hard labor. The clay plaster walls absorbed heat during evening fires and continued radiating warmth for hours after the combustion had ended, creating a more comfortable and consistent environment. More significantly, the improved air sealing eliminated the cold drafts that had previously robbed heat from the masonry bed's thermal output, allowing the system to perform at its full potential. The cabin now maintained more consistent temperatures throughout its interior space, eliminating the extreme hot and cold zones that had been created by the original iron stove setup. Jacob also discovered an unexpected benefit of the clay plaster walls during a rainy period in early May. Unlike the bare log surfaces, which absorbed moisture from the humid air and were prone to developing unsightly mold growth, the clay surfaces actually helped regulate humidity levels inside the cabin, creating a healthier and more comfortable living environment. The clay absorbed excess moisture during damp periods and released it slowly when conditions became dry, acting as a natural humidifier and dehumidifier. Fuel consumption dropped dramatically with the improved envelope, a testament to the power of conservation. Where the masonry bed alone had reduced wood usage by approximately 50% compared to the iron stove, the combination of thermal mass and proper sealing achieved savings of roughly 70%, a truly remarkable improvement in efficiency. A single evening fire now provided comfortable temperatures throughout the following day, even during the cool spring weather, demonstrating the effectiveness of the integrated system. The integrated system demonstrated principles that individual components could never achieve on their own. The masonry bed provided invaluable thermal storage, but without proper envelope control, much of that stored heat was simply wasted, leaking out into the wilderness. Conversely, air sealing and insulation alone could not provide the sustained, even heat distribution that the thermal mass delivered. Together, they created a heating system that dramatically outperformed conventional frontier methods while using significantly less fuel and providing a superior level of comfort, a true triumph of ingenuity and resourcefulness. This combination would soon face its ultimate test when the next winter brought sustained sub-zero temperatures and relentless winds to the high country. As spring turned to summer and the mountain air began to warm, Jacob discovered that his masonry heating system created a set of new challenges that conventional iron stoves had never presented, challenges that would require careful attention and innovative solutions. The complex flue labyrinth, while excellent at capturing heat from combustion gases, also provided numerous surfaces where moisture could condense and soot could accumulate, a breeding ground for potential problems. During periods of humid weather, Condensation formed inside the stone channels, creating conditions that could potentially lead to structural damage and poor air quality, a silent and insidious threat. More critically, improper fire management could easily fill the labyrinth with creosote deposits, a highly flammable substance that reduced efficiency and created a serious fire hazard, a constant source of concern. The chimney design required immediate attention and a thorough reevaluation. Jacob's original 8-inch square chimney, which had proven adequate for his previous iron stove, proved insufficient for the masonry system's complex gas flow requirements. The lengthy flue path created significant resistance that demanded a stronger draft to effectively pull combustion gases through the labyrinth, a matter of both efficiency and safety. When atmospheric pressure dropped during storm systems, backdrafts pushed smoke into the cabin, indicating an inadequate chimney height and cross-sectional area, a clear warning sign that required immediate action. Jacob undertook the arduous task of rebuilding the chimney, drawing upon principles he had gleaned from discussions with a traveling mason who had passed through the valley the previous summer, a chance encounter that proved invaluable. The new structure rose 24 feet above the cabin roof, a towering testament to his dedication, constructed with carefully selected flat stones and high-quality clay mortar. Internal dimensions measured 10 inches by 12 inches, providing 30% more cross-sectional area than the original design, a significant improvement in airflow. Most importantly, Jacob painstakingly lined the interior with a smooth clay wash, infused with fine sand, to create a surface that promoted laminar gas flow and resisted creosote adhesion, minimizing the risk of fire. The chimney's base required a specialized smoke chamber, a carefully engineered space where gases from the flue labyrinth could gather and accelerate upward, a crucial element for efficient draft. Jacob constructed this chamber directly above the final horizontal flue section, creating an expanding volume that allowed combustion gases to slow down, deposit any remaining particles, and then accelerate smoothly into the vertical chimney shaft, a masterpiece of design. This design effectively eliminated the turbulence that had caused backdrafts and poor draw in his original system, creating a safer and more efficient chimney. Fuel selection and preparation became critical factors, aspects that conventional frontier heating had largely ignored, often with disastrous consequences. Iron stoves could burn almost any combustible material, from green wood to trash, albeit inefficiently and with a significant amount of smoke. The masonry system, however, demanded carefully chosen and prepared fuel to achieve complete combustion and minimize deposits in the flue channels, requiring a more nuanced and deliberate approach. Jacob developed a systematic approach to fuel management, meticulously based on techniques his grandfather had described for European masonry stoves, a blend of tradition and practicality. Hardwood species proved essential for optimal performance, providing the greatest heat output and minimizing creosote buildup. Jacob focused on splitting oak, maple, and ash whenever they were available, prized for their density and slow-burning properties, carefully avoiding softwoods like pine, except for kindling purposes, a delicate balance of resourcefulness and efficiency. Hardwoods burned hotter and more completely, producing less smoke and fewer volatile compounds that could condense as creosote within the flue system, safeguarding against the risk of fire. He split all firewood to a uniform thickness, approximately 3 to 4 inches, ensuring consistent burning rates and complete combustion, maximizing heat output and minimizing waste. Seasoning requirements far exceeded typical frontier practices, a testament to Jacob's dedication to efficiency and safety. While most settlers commonly burned wood cut the same season, Jacob discovered that his system performed best with wood that had been dried for at least 18 months, allowing the moisture content to drop significantly. He constructed a dedicated woodshed with open sides and a slanted roof, carefully positioned to allow ample air circulation while protecting the fuel from direct precipitation, a crucial step in the seasoning process. Properly seasoned wood contained less than 20% moisture content, burned with minimal smoke production, and generated maximum heat output per pound, a significant improvement in both efficiency and environmental impact. Fire management techniques completely revolutionized Jacob's approach to heating, transforming it from a chore into a carefully orchestrated process. Rather than maintaining continuous, low-intensity fires, like those used with iron stoves, he adopted a batch burning strategy that maximized combustion efficiency, creating brief periods of intense heat. Each evening, he built a single, intense fire, using dry kindling and split hardwood, allowing it to burn completely to coals before adding the next fuel load, a method designed to maximize heat output and minimize waste. This technique achieved temperatures hot enough for complete combustion while minimizing the smoldering conditions that produced creosote, reducing the risk of fire. The timing and sequence of fuel loading required precise attention and a keen understanding of the combustion process, transforming a simple task into an art form. Jakob started each fire with fine kindling, carefully arranged in a grid pattern that promoted ample airflow, then added progressively larger pieces as the fire established itself, gradually increasing the intensity. Once the firebox reached full intensity, he loaded the maximum fuel quantity the chamber could safely accommodate, then sealed the firebox opening with a cast iron door he had fabricated from salvaged stove parts, a resourceful reuse of existing materials. This approach created a controlled burn that consumed all available oxygen efficiently while maintaining high temperatures throughout the combustion cycle, maximizing heat output and minimizing harmful emissions. Ventilation management addressed the critical issues of moisture control and indoor air quality, concerns that the sealed envelope had inadvertently created, a testament to the interconnectedness of the system. The improved air sealing, while beneficial for heat retention, had eliminated the natural infiltration that had previously provided fresh air exchange, sometimes leading to stuffy conditions and an unhealthy buildup of moisture, a delicate balance that required careful management. Jakob instituted a systematic ventilation routine that balanced the need for fresh air with the imperative to conserve heat, a constant negotiation between comfort and efficiency. Each morning, after the fire had burned completely to ash, Jakob opened a. On the cabin's leeward side, a small window served a crucial purpose, opened precisely for 15 minutes. This brief but vital ritual allowed the escape of moisture-laden air, a byproduct of overnight cooking and the simple act of breathing, while simultaneously drawing in the crisp, dry air from the outside. This fleeting ventilation period proved remarkably effective, purging the cabin of humidity without causing a significant drop in the thermal mass's stored heat. As the damp weather stretched into prolonged spells, Jakob wisely extended these ventilation sessions, proactively combating the insidious growth of mold on the cabin's organic materials, ensuring the longevity and health of his dwelling. Ash removal transformed into a weekly maintenance ritual, absolutely critical to the heating system's consistent performance. Unlike the more forgiving iron stoves, where ash could accumulate for extended periods with little consequence, the masonry firebox demanded regular cleaning. This was essential to maintain proper airflow within the firebox and, more importantly, to prevent the ash from obstructing the crucial entrance to the intricate flue labyrinth, the heart of the system's efficiency. Jakob meticulously removed the ash when it reached a depth of approximately 2 inches, employing a long-handled wooden shovel. This careful approach was not merely about convenience. It was a deliberate effort to avoid damaging the delicate clay mortar joints meticulously crafted in the firebox floor. However, the ash itself proved to be far more valuable than simple waste, finding multiple purposes beyond mere disposal. When mixed with water, the wood ash created a potent caustic solution, surprisingly effective for cleaning the chimney's clay lining. This concoction helped to loosen and remove light creosote deposits, ensuring optimal chimney performance and reducing the risk of dangerous chimney fires. Moreover, Jakob ingeniously incorporated the ash as an additive in his mortar recipes. The potassium compounds present in the ash significantly improved the clay's overall durability and resistance to water penetration, enhancing the structural integrity of his construction. By midsummer, the meticulously refined heating system operated with remarkable efficiency and an impressive degree of safety. Jakob's careful attention to proper fuel selection, choosing seasoned oak and other hardwoods, coupled with his skillful fire management techniques, had completely eliminated the smoke infiltration and instances of poor combustion that had plagued the early iterations of his design. The enlarged chimney, a product of earlier experimentation, now provided a consistent and reliable draft, largely unaffected by prevailing weather conditions. This, combined with the systematic ventilation routine, maintained healthy indoor air quality within the cabin, all without sacrificing precious thermal energy. Jacob's neighbors began to notice a remarkable phenomenon: the complete absence of visible smoke emanating from his chimney, even during periods when everyone else was burning fires for cooking or warmth. The clean combustion process and the system's incredibly effective heat capture meant that almost no wasted thermal energy escaped as visible exhaust. This stood in stark contrast to their own chimneys, which produced steady, billowing streams of smoke throughout the day, a testament to inefficiency and wasted resources. This efficiency would prove to be utterly decisive when winter inevitably returned, transforming fuel conservation from a matter of mere convenience to a critical matter of survival. The ultimate test arrived with brutal force in December of 1885. An Arctic air mass, a frigid behemoth, settled over the Wind River Mountains and stubbornly refused to budge for 6 unrelenting weeks. Temperatures plummeted to a bone-chilling 30 degrees below zero Fahrenheit and remained there, day after day, accompanied by fierce winds that drove the effective temperature even lower, biting through clothing and chilling bones to the core. Snow accumulated to staggering depths, reaching 4 feet on the level ground, with drifts piling up to an unbelievable 8 feet against north-facing walls. This sustained and merciless cold snap pushed every heating system in the valley far beyond its designed operational limits, mercilessly separating effective, well-engineered methods from mere theoretical improvements or wishful thinking. Thomas Brennan's cabin, a typical frontier dwelling, quickly became a living laboratory for conventional heating failure. His cast-iron stove, which had been perfectly adequate for normal winter conditions, now consumed firewood at an alarming and unsustainable rate, while struggling to maintain interior temperatures even slightly above freezing. Brennan burned through his entire winter wood supply by mid-January, a terrifying prospect that forced him to resort to desperate measures. He began breaking up furniture, tearing down barn siding, and even dismantling fence posts, all in a frantic attempt to keep his family alive. Even with this continuous feeding of fuel into the insatiable stove, thick frost formed on the interior walls each night, and the family huddled together under every available blanket, shivering uncontrollably despite their efforts. The Brennan family's water supply woes perfectly illustrated the cascading series of problems created by inadequate heating. Their wooden water barrel, positioned a mere 3 feet from the stove for convenience, froze solid during the coldest nights, despite the supposedly nearby fire. Melting ice to obtain even the most basic drinking water required burning precious fuel, creating a vicious and unsustainable cycle where survival activities rapidly consumed the very resources needed to maintain warmth. Food storage became equally problematic as root vegetables froze solid in the cabin's cold corners, rendering weeks of painstakingly preserved supplies inedible and useless. Even more dangerously, the extreme cold revealed previously unnoticed structural weaknesses in conventional log construction. The Curtis cabin, built using standard techniques common to the area, developed severe settling as the logs contracted in the sustained freeze. Gaps opened up between the wall logs, despite previous chinking efforts to seal them, allowing blasts of frigid air to pour directly into the living space. Samuel Curtis spent entire days desperately rechinking these gaps with frozen mud and snow, but the repairs were futile, failing almost as soon as the materials froze solid. Most critically, the relentless snow loads threatened several cabins with structural collapse. The Curtis and Brennan cabins, with their minimal interior heating, provided virtually no thermal protection for their roof structures. Ice dams formed along the eaves where snow accumulated, creating tremendous weight loads that caused roof beams to sag visibly under the strain. Henrik Larsson's cabin actually suffered a partial roof failure when one crucial support beam cracked ominously under the combined load of snow and ice, flooding the interior with snow and forcing the family to seek shelter with more fortunate neighbors. In stark contrast to the struggles of his neighbors, Jacob's meticulously designed system responded to the extreme conditions with remarkable stability and efficiency. His evening fire routine remained virtually unchanged throughout the entire cold snap, requiring approximately 1/8 of a cord of split oak to maintain comfortable interior conditions for a full 24 hours. While his neighbors frantically burned furniture and outbuildings in a desperate attempt to stay alive, Jacob's woodshed remained well-stocked, his fuel consumption running an astonishing 70% below his neighbors' emergency consumption rates. The thermal mass of the masonry heater demonstrated a previously unobserved benefit during this sustained freeze. The massive stone structure created a remarkable thermal inertia that resisted rapid temperature changes, effectively moderating the extreme swings that plagued conventional heating systems. When outside temperatures plummeted from 0 to 30 below zero overnight, Jacob's cabin interior temperature declined by only a modest 5 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit, compared to the dramatic 20 to 30 degree drops experienced by his neighbors using iron stoves. Interior climate control further revealed the system's sophisticated thermal management capabilities. The clay-plastered walls absorb excess heat during peak firing periods and released it gradually as outside temperatures plummeted. This thermal buffering created remarkably stable interior conditions, with temperature variations of less than 10 degrees throughout each 24-hour cycle. The sleeping platform maintained surface temperatures between a comfortable 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the outside conditions, providing comfortable rest without the need for the multiple layers of blankets required in conventional cabins. Water and food preservation demonstrated practical advantages that extended far beyond mere comfort. Jacob's cabin maintained interior temperatures consistently above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, preventing the freezing of stored water and preserving root vegetables throughout the entire cold snap. His wooden water containers never froze, eliminating the fuel waste associated with the constant ice melting that plagued his neighbors. Preserved foods remained easily accessible and usable, significantly reducing the caloric stress that accompanied survival heating in other cabins. The masonry system's impact on roof performance proved equally significant. Heat radiating from the thermal mass created an interior temperature differential that effectively prevented ice dam formation and reduced snow load accumulation. The cabin's roof remained relatively warm compared to unheated structures, causing snow to sublimate gradually rather than building up into dangerous weight loads. While neighbor cabins battled ice dams and structural damage, Jacob's roof maintained its structural integrity throughout the entire freeze. Most remarkably, the system's efficiency actually improved during the coldest conditions. The extreme temperature differential between the interior and exterior enhanced the chimney draft, improving combustion efficiency and heat extraction from the intricate flue labyrinth. Complete fuel combustion during these peak cold conditions meant that virtually no waste heat escaped up the chimney, maximizing the thermal energy captured by the stone mass. By late January, neighboring families began making desperate visits to Jacob's cabin, seeking refuge from the brutal conditions in their own homes. Mary Curtis brought her children for afternoon visits, marveling at the comfortable interior temperatures and the complete absence of drafts or cold spots. These visits provided a stark demonstration of the system's effectiveness, as visitors could immediately feel the palpable difference between the sustained, even warmth of the masonry heater and the blast furnace heating provided by conventional stoves. Samuel Curtis became the first convert, approaching Jacob in early February to learn the intricate construction techniques. Curtis had watched his own fuel supplies dwindle to dangerously low levels while Jacob's remained stable, and his cabin's structural problems had thoroughly convinced him that conventional methods were simply inadequate for the harsh mountain conditions. Jacob generously shared his grandfather's masonry knowledge freely, helping Curtis plan a similar system for reconstruction after winter's end. Henrik Larsson, whose cabin had suffered roof damage, committed to completely rebuilding, incorporating Jacob's thermal mass principles into the new design. Thomas Brennan, facing potential fuel exhaustion, negotiated to purchase seasoned hardwood from Jacob's surplus supply in exchange for labor assistance with future construction projects. The extreme conditions had effectively transformed skepticism into a desperate interest in proven alternatives. Word of Jacob's remarkable success spread beyond the immediate valley through mail correspondence and the occasional traveling supply wagon. The territorial newspaper in Cheyenne even published a brief article describing the European heating methods being tested in mountain homesteads, though without providing specific technical details. Supply merchants began receiving unexpected requests for claywork tools and masonry materials from previously uninterested customers, a sure sign of changing attitudes. The sustained freeze finally broke in early March, but its lessons had permanently altered local building practices. 3 new cabins constructed that spring incorporated masonry heating systems based on Jacobs' innovative design, with modifications tailored to individual sites and the specific materials available. The thermal mass approach had definitively proven itself under the most severe conditions frontier builders could possibly face, firmly establishing efficient heating as a practical necessity for survival in the mountains, rather than merely an old-world luxury.